I'm staring at my phone screen, my arthritic fingers trembling as I watch the little heart icons multiply beneath Sarah's latest Instagram post. 3,000 likes and counting. The video shows her perfectly manicured hands folding chocolate chips into cookie dough. Her voice cheerful and warm as she explains her secret family recipe to her devoted followers. The key is to use real butter and beat it until it's fluffy, she chirps, her blonde hair catching the kitchen light just so. And always use a wooden spoon for mixing. It makes all the difference. She holds up the spoon, that cursed wooden spoon, and waves it at the camera like it's some magical wand. My breath catches in my throat. I know that spoon intimately. I know the weight of it, the way it whistles through the air, the sharp crack it makes against skin. I know how it feels when it connects with my ribs, my arms, the backs of my legs when no one will see the marks. The comments flood in beneath the video. Sarah, you're such an amazing mom. These cookies are literally the best I've ever had. Goals. You're the perfect wife and mother. One particularly effusive comment from our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, reads, "You're such a blessing to your family, especially taking such good care of your mother-in-law. David is so lucky to have you. If only she knew." I closed the app and set the phone down with shaking hands. Through the kitchen window, I can see Sarah in the backyard, laughing as she pushes little Emma on the swing set. She's wearing a sundress that makes her look like something out of a magazine, her smile radiant and genuine. From here, she looks like the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect daughter _law. It's been 2 years since I moved in with David and Sarah after Harold died. 2 years since I lost my home, my independence, my husband of 47 years. I had nowhere else to go. Our savings were depleted by Harold's medical bills, and David insisted I couldn't live alone anymore. "Mum, you're 72. He'd sighed, his voice gentle but firm. "Sarah and I want to take care of you. It's what Dad would have wanted. In the beginning, I thought I was blessed." Sarah seemed genuinely happy to have me. She showed me to the guest room she'd decorated with soft blues and family photos, helped me unpack my belongings, made my favorite tea every morning. She introduced me to her friends as David's wonderful mother, and I felt welcomed, loved, needed. The first time she hit me, I thought it was an accident. It was about 3 months after I'd moved in. David was at work, and Sarah was making dinner while I sat at the kitchen table, watching her cook. I made some comment about how Harold used to like his potatoes prepared differently. Nothing cruel, just an observation. Sarah's stirring slowed, and when she turned around, her smile was tight. "Margaret," she said, her voice still sweet, but with an edge I hadn't heard before. "This is how we do things in our home." She walked over with the wooden spoon still in her hand, and I thought she was going to show me something about her technique. Instead, she brought it down hard across my knuckles. The pain was sharp and immediate, but what shocked me more was the look in her eyes, cold, calculating, completely devoid of the warmth I'd grown accustomed to. "I'm so sorry," she gasped immediately, her face transforming back into concern. "I'm such a klutz. Are you okay? Here, let me get you some ice." I was so stunned I barely protested as she fussed over me, applying ice to my knuckles and apologizing profusely. When David came home, she told him I'd had a little accident while helping in the kitchen. He was concerned, gentle, exactly the son I'd raised him to be. That night, lying in my bed, I convinced myself it really had been an accident. Sarah wasn't capable of deliberate cruelty. She was David's wife, Emma and Michael's mother, the woman who made cookies for every church function and volunteered at the school fundraiser. She was the woman my son loved, the woman who'd welcomed me into her home, but accidents don't have that look in their eyes. Accidents don't smile that particular smile. The hits became more frequent, more deliberate. Always when David wasn't home. Always with that wooden spoon. Always followed by the same performance shock, concern, apologies, ice packs, and plausible explanations for David later. I learned to anticipate them. A certain tightness around her eyes when she looked at me. The way her jaw clenched when I asked questions or made suggestions. The particular silence that fell over the house when it was just the two of us. I learned to fear the sound of that spoon being pulled from the ceramic holder by the stove. Now, watching her push Emma on the swing, I wonder how many people would believe me if I told them. Sarah has created such a perfect image of herself, the devoted wife, the loving mother, the caring daughter-in-law. She documents every moment of our seemingly happy family life on social media. She brings homemade cookies to every gathering, always with that wooden spoon visible in the background of her photos. Everyone loves Sarah's cookies. Everyone loves Sarah. But I remember what that spoon is really used for. The back door opens, and Sarah steps inside with Emma, both of them laughing about something. Sarah's eyes meet mine across the kitchen, and for just a moment, I see it, that cold calculation I've come to know so well. "Hi, Grandma Margaret," Emma says, running over to hug me. "Hello, sweetheart," I manage, holding her close while Sarah watches. "Grandma, are you okay?" Emma asks, pulling back to look at me with concerned 8-year-old eyes. Sarah's smile doesn't waver, but her hand moves toward the wooden spoon holder. "I'm fine, darling," I whisper, knowing I'm not fine at all. The pattern became clear within 6 months, though it took me much longer to admit it to myself. I'm not a stupid woman. I raised 3 children, managed a household for decades, worked part-time at the library until Harold got sick. But somehow, I convinced myself that each incident was isolated, that Sarah was just stressed, that I was imagining things. I wasn't imagining the bruises. This morning, I'm standing in front of my bathroom mirror, cataloguing the damage from yesterday's lesson. A purple mark on my upper arm where Sarah grabbed me, her fingers digging in when I suggested we might call David to let him know we were running late for Emma's soccer practice. 3 welts on my lower back from the wooden spoon when I dared to ask if we could stop by the pharmacy to pick up my blood pressure medication. "We don't have time for your pills, Margaret," she'd hissed, her voice dropping to that whisper I'd learned to fear. "Your health isn't more important than Emma's game." The spoon came down hard, 3 quick strikes that made me gasp and stumble forward. Then, just as quickly, her voice returned to its normal pitch. "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there. Are you all right?" Always the same performance. Always the same prop. I've learned to wear long sleeves even in summer, to choose pants over skirts, to position myself carefully when David's around so he can't see the marks. Yesterday, when he commented on how warm I looked in my cardigan, Sarah jumped in with concern. "I worry about her circulation," she said, rubbing my shoulder right where the bruise was darkest. I tried not to wince. At her age, the body doesn't regulate temperature the same way. "Maybe we should talk to Dr. Henderson about it." David nodded, completely fooled. "Good thinking, honey. Mum, we'll make you an appointment next week." The worst part wasn't the physical pain, though. That was bad enough. It was watching Sarah transform herself, depending on who was in the room. When David walked through the door each evening, she became this glowing, attentive wife and daughter-in-law. She'd rush to take his coat, ask about his day, bring him a beer while dinner finished cooking. And she'd include me in everything, her arm around my shoulders, her voice full of warmth. "Your mother helped me with the cookies for tomorrow's bake sale," she'd tell him, beaming at me. "She has such wonderful suggestions." What she didn't mention was that earlier that day, she'd slammed my hand in the kitchen drawer when I'd reached for the measuring cups without asking permission first. "This is my kitchen," she'd said, her face inches from mine. "You live here because I allow it. Don't forget that." The psychological games were worse than the physical abuse. Sarah had a talent for making me question my own memory, my own perception of reality. She'd move my things and then act concerned when I couldn't find them. She'd tell me she'd explained something to me earlier when I knew she hadn't, then suggest I was having one of those senior moments. "I'm worried about you, Margaret," she'd say in front of David, her brow furrowed with fake concern. "You seem to be getting more forgetful lately. Maybe we should have Dr. Henderson check for early signs of dementia." The word hung in the air, like a threat. Dementia. The perfect excuse for any injuries, any complaints, any attempts to tell the truth about what was happening to me. My social circle began to shrink, without me realizing it was happening. Sarah would forget to mention that my friend Eleanor had called. She'd make appointments for me on the same day as my book club meetings. She'd volunteer to drive me places and then suddenly remember she had other obligations. "I'm so sorry, Margaret," she'd say, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I completely forgot about Emma's dentist appointment. Maybe next time?" There was never a next time. Gradually, I found myself isolated in the house with Sarah and the children. No friends calling, no activities to attend, no escape from the constant vigilance required to avoid another encounter with that wooden spoon. The children saw everything, though Sarah pretended they didn't. Little Michael, only 5, would sometimes ask why Grandma Margaret was crying. Sarah would scoop him up and explain that sometimes older people get sad for no reason, that it was normal, that he shouldn't worry about it. But Emma, 8 years old and sharp as a tack, watched everything with those serious dark eyes. She'd seen her mother grab me, though she couldn't understand what she was witnessing. Sometimes she'd bring me her favorite stuffed animal when I was sitting alone, a small gesture of comfort that broke my heart. "Are you sick, Grandma?" she asked me once when Sarah was in the laundry room. "No, sweetheart," I whispered, pulling her close. "Grandma's just tired." But I wasn't just tired. I was terrified. And I was beginning to understand that Sarah's carefully constructed image as the perfect wife and mother wasn't just for show. It was armor. Protection against anyone who might question what was happening behind closed doors. After all, who would believe that the woman who made those beloved cookies, who posted inspirational quotes about family on Facebook, who volunteered at the school, and brought casseroles to sick neighbors, was systematically abusing her elderly mother-in-law? Who would believe that the wooden spoon in all those cheerful baking videos was the same one she used to beat me when no one was looking? The answer, I was beginning to realize, was no one. Sleep has become my enemy. Every night I lie in the guest room bed, the same bed Sarah had so lovingly prepared for me 2 years ago, and listen to the sounds of the house settling. My body aches in places I didn't know could ache, and my mind races with worry about what tomorrow might bring. It's 3:17 a.m., and I'm staring at the ceiling, my ribs throbbing where Sarah caught me with the spoon yesterday afternoon. She'd been making her famous snickerdoodles for the church potluck, and I'd made the mistake of asking if she needed help rolling the dough balls in cinnamon sugar. The look that crossed her face should have been my warning. "I've been making these cookies since before you lived here," she'd said, her voice deadly quiet. "I don't need an old woman's help." The spoon was in her hand before I could step back. 3 sharp jabs to my side, right below my bra line where the bruises would be hidden. I doubled over, gasping, and she immediately switched back to her concerned voice. "Oh my goodness, Margaret, are you having chest pains? Should I call David?" Even in my pain, I recognized the threat. If she called David, she'd spin it as a health emergency. Another sign that I was becoming a burden, that my body was failing, that maybe I needed more intensive care than they could provide at home. I'm fine, I managed to wheeze. Just a little tired. You should rest more, she said, already back to rolling cookie dough. At your age, you need to be careful not to overdo it. Now, hours later, I can't find a comfortable position. Every time I shift, the bruises scream in protest. I've taken to keeping a small supply of over-the-counter pain medication hidden in my bedroom, tucked behind my jewelry box where Sarah won't find it during her frequent cleaning sessions. My appetite has disappeared almost entirely. Sarah notices, of course, and makes a show of concern at dinner. Margaret barely touched her food again, she tells David, her voice laden with worry. I'm starting to think she might have some underlying health issues. Maybe depression. David looks at me with such genuine concern that I want to cry. Mum, are you feeling okay? You do seem different lately. Different? Yes, I am different. I'm a shell of the woman I used to be. I jump at sudden noises. I find myself apologizing for things that aren't my fault. I've developed a stutter that only appears when Sarah and I are alone, when my nervous system goes into overdrive trying to avoid saying the wrong thing. I'm just still adjusting, I tell him, the lie tasting bitter in my mouth. It's been a big change. Sarah reaches across the table and pats my hand, her touch making my skin crawl. Of course it has, sweetie. Losing Harold was so traumatic. It's completely normal to have trouble adjusting. Maybe we should talk to Dr. Henderson about some medication to help with the transition. Medication. Another way to explain away any symptoms of abuse, any attempts to speak up. Another way to make me seem unreliable, confused, mentally unstable. After dinner, I try to help with the dishes, but my hands shake so badly I nearly drop a plate. Sarah catches it just in time, and I see the flash of anger in her eyes before she recovers. Maybe you should sit down, Margaret, she says sweetly. You seem a bit unsteady tonight. I retreat to my room, but I can hear her talking to David in the kitchen. I'm really worried about her, Sarah says, her voice carrying down the hallway. She's not herself at all. The forgetfulness, the trembling, the way she barely eats. I think grief is affecting her more than we realized. I press my ear to the door, hating myself for eavesdropping, but desperate to know what she's saying about me. Maybe we should consider, I don't know, adult daycare? Or even assisted living. David's voice is heavy with guilt. I just want what's best for her. Oh, honey, no, Sarah says. And I can picture her rubbing his arm comfortingly. She's family. We'll figure this out together. I just think we need to be realistic about what she needs right now. What I need is to be safe in my own home. What I need is for my son to see what his wife is really like. What I need is for someone, anyone, to believe me. But I can't bring myself to tell him. Every time I consider it, I imagine the conversation. David would be shocked, confused, defensive. Sarah would be there, looking hurt and bewildered, suggesting that I'm confused, that I'm having episodes, that I'm not remembering things correctly. And then what? Even if David believed me, which seems impossible, what would happen to Emma and Michael? They'd be caught in the middle of a family war. Sarah would make sure I never saw them again. She'd probably move out, take the children, and I'd lose. Not just my home, but my grandchildren too. The thought of never seeing Emma's gap-toothed smile or Michael's enthusiastic hugs makes my chest tight with panic. They're the only light in my increasingly dark world. So I stay silent. I endure. I count the bruises and catalogue the injuries. Wonder how long I can keep this up. In the morning, I'll put on my long sleeves and my practice smile. I'll eat breakfast and pretend everything is fine. I'll watch Sarah make her cookies with that wooden spoon, and post about it on social media. And I'll say nothing. Because sometimes staying silent feels like the only way to survive, even when that silence is killing me. Emma finds me crying in the laundry room on a Tuesday morning, my shoulders shaking as I fold David's work shirts. I try to wipe my eyes quickly, but she's already seen everything. At 8 years old, she's becoming too observant, too aware of the tension that permeates our house like smoke. Grandma Margaret, why are you sad? She asks, her small hand touching my arm gently. I look down at her concerned face and feel my heart breaking all over again. How do I explain that I'm crying because her mother hit me with a wooden spoon 20 minutes ago for putting the dish soap in the wrong place? How do I tell her that I'm terrified of the woman who tucks her into bed every night? I'm okay, sweetheart, I whisper, pulling her into a hug. Just missing Grandpa Harold today. It's not entirely a lie. I do miss Harold every day. But right, now I'm crying because I'm trapped in a nightmare with no way out. Emma pulls back and studies my face with those serious dark eyes. Mum says you're sick, she says quietly. She says that's why you're different now. My blood runs cold. What else does Mom say? She says we need to be extra gentle with you because your brain isn't working right anymore. She says that's why. You forget things and get confused. Emma's voice drops to a whisper. But you don't seem confused to me, Grandma. You still help me with my homework and remember all my favorite stories. I close my eyes, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. Sarah is already poisoning my grandchildren against me, planting seeds of doubt about my mental state. It's brilliant, really. If I ever try to tell them what's happening, they'll think it's just my sick brain talking. Mum, Emma calls suddenly, and I feel my whole body tense. Grandma Margaret is crying again. Sarah appears in the doorway, her expression instantly shifting to concern. Oh no, what's wrong? She moves toward us, and I instinctively step back, bumping into the washing machine. I think she's having another sad day, Emma explains, her voice innocent but worried. Sarah's eyes meet mine over Emma's head, and I see the warning there. Don't you dare upset my daughter. Poor Grandma, Sarah says, her voice dripping with false sympathy. The grief is so hard on her, isn't it, Emma? Sometimes when people get older, their emotions get very mixed up. She reaches out and rubs my shoulder, her fingers pressing exactly where she knows the bruises are hidden under my cardigan. I bite back a gasp. Maybe you should lie down for a while, Margaret, she suggests sweetly. You seem overwhelmed. It's not a suggestion. It's a command. I nod quickly and start to leave, but Emma catches my hand. Can I come with you, Grandma? We could read together. Oh, sweetie, Grandma needs to rest, Sarah interrupts smoothly. Besides, you have that art project to finish for school, remember? I set up all your supplies on the kitchen table. Emma's face falls, but she obediently heads toward the kitchen. I watch her go, my heart aching. Even these small moments of connection with my granddaughter are being controlled, monitored, limited. Later that evening, I'm helping 5-year-old Michael with his bath when he asks me a question that stops my heart. Grandma, why does Mommy get so angry when Daddy's not home? I nearly dropped the washcloth. What do you mean, sweetheart? Michael looks up at me with his father's eyes. Her voice gets different, and she gets that face. He scrunches up his features in an exaggerated frown. She never gets that face when Daddy's here. My hands are shaking as I help him out of the tub. Mommy gets stressed sometimes, I say carefully. All mommies do. But she's not stressed with me and Emma, he says matter-of-factly. Just with you. Out of the mouths of babes. Even a 5-year-old can see what my adult son cannot. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings, I tell him, wrapping him in a towel. But you don't need to worry about that, okay? That's for grown-ups to figure out. That as I tuck him into bed, I realize he's already worrying about it. Both children are. They're walking on eggshells just like I am, trying to navigate the unpredictable moods and hidden tensions in their own home. That night, I lie awake thinking about my impossible situation. If I stay and endure Sarah's abuse, I'm teaching Emma and Michael that this is normal, that violence is acceptable, that victims should stay silent, and showing them that love looks like fear, that family means walking on eggshells. But if I leave, if I somehow find the courage to speak up, and it destroys their family, what happens to them? David would be devastated. Sarah would make sure I never saw them again. They'd lose their grandmother, their father would be heartbroken, and they'd be left alone with a mother whose cruelty I've seen firsthand. I've noticed the way Sarah snaps at Emma when she thinks no one is listening. The way she grabs Michael's arm too tightly when he's not moving fast enough. The children aren't safe either. But at least with me here, I can sometimes redirect her anger toward myself. I'm their shield, even though I'm breaking under the weight of it. The wooden spoon sits in its holder in the kitchen, innocent and ordinary to everyone else, but to me it represents an impossible choice. Stay and suffer to protect my grandchildren, or save myself and abandon them to whatever Sarah might. Become without a target for her rage. Either way, I'm failing them. Either way, I'm failing myself. The clock ticks toward midnight, and I'm no closer to an answer than I was when this nightmare began. The day everything changed started like any other. Sarah was hosting her monthly book club meeting, and the house buzzed with preparation. She'd been up since dawn, cleaning surfaces that were already spotless, arranging flowers, and of course, making her famous chocolate chip cookies. I stayed in my room most of the morning, knowing better than to get in her way when she was entertaining. But around noon, she called for me. "Margaret, I need your help in the kitchen." Her voice had that edge to it that I'd learned to recognize. I found her standing at the counter, flour dusting her apron, cookie dough spread across the granite surface. The wooden spoon lay beside the mixing bowl, and my stomach clenched at the sight of it. "I need you to roll these cookie balls while I start the next batch," she said without looking up. "The ladies will be here in 2 hours, and I'm behind schedule." I moved carefully to the counter, my hands already trembling. The dough was perfect. Sarah never made mistakes with her baking. I began rolling small portions into balls, trying to make them uniform, trying to stay invisible. "Not like that," Sarah snapped suddenly. "They're all different sizes. Look at this one, it's twice as big as that one." I looked at the cookies I'd rolled. They seemed fine to me, but I knew better than to argue. "I'm sorry. I'll be more careful." "You're ruining them," she hissed, snatching the misshapen cookie from my hands. "These women expect perfection, Margaret. They're going to judge my entire reputation based on these cookies." I reached for another piece of dough, my hands shaking harder now. "I'll do better." "No." Her voice was ice cold. "You've done enough damage." She grabbed the wooden spoon from the counter, and I instinctively took a step back. But there was nowhere to go. I was trapped between her and the kitchen island. "Sarah, please." The first blow caught me across the shoulder, hard enough to make me stumble. The second hit my forearm as I tried to protect myself. But it was the third one that changed everything. She swung the spoon with such force that, when I raised my hand to block it, the impact sent me reeling backward. My hip hit the corner of the kitchen island, and I went down hard, my head striking the tile floor with a sickening crack. For a moment, the world went dark. When I came to, Sarah was standing over me, her face pale with what looked like genuine shock. "Oh, God," she whispered. Oh God, oh God. I tried to sit up, but the room spun violently. My head felt like it was splitting open, and when I touched my scalp, my fingers came away sticky with blood. I'm hurt, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant. Sarah knelt beside me, her hands fluttering helplessly. For the first time, since the abuse began, she looked genuinely afraid. It's okay, it's okay. Just a little bump, you'll be fine. But I wasn't fine. Blood was pooling beneath my head, and my vision kept blurring. I tried to stand and immediately vomited. We need to go to the hospital, I said, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. No, Sarah said quickly. No, you're fine. Just let me clean this up. Sarah, I looked at her directly, and maybe it was the head injury, or maybe it was finally reaching my limit, but I felt something change inside me. I need medical attention, now. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the calculation in her eyes. She was weighing her options, trying to figure out how to spin this, how to make it my fault. You fell, she said finally. You were helping me with the cookies, and you got dizzy and fell. It happens to people your age. I know what happened, I said quietly. Her eyes narrowed. Do you, Margaret? Because sometimes you get confused. Sometimes you don't remember things correctly. But this time, her gaslighting didn't work. Maybe it was the clarity that comes with concussion. Or maybe I was just too tired to be manipulated anymore. I remember everything, Sarah. Every single time. The ride to the hospital was tense and silent. Sarah kept glancing at me, probably rehearsing her story. She'd already called David to let him know there had been an accident, her voice full of concern and worry. At the emergency room. They took me straight back for a CT scan. The nurse who helped me onto the examination table was kind, her hands gentle as she cleaned the blood from my hair. Can you tell me what happened, Mrs. Chun? She asked. I looked toward the doorway where Sarah waited, her face a mask of worry. For anyone watching, our eyes met, and I saw the warning there. The same warning I'd seen dozens of times before, but this time something was different. Maybe it was the way the nurse's hands reminded me of my own mother's gentle touch. Maybe it was the realization that I could have died on that kitchen floor. Maybe it was the thought of Emma and Michael living in that house, learning that violence was normal, that victims should stay silent. I fell, I heard myself say, and Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly. But then Dr. Rodriguez came in, an older man with kind eyes and gentle hands. As he examined my head wound, asking questions about my symptoms, I caught him looking at the finger-shaped bruises on my arms that were visible now that I'd had to remove my cardigan. Mrs. Chun, he said quietly, these bruises on your arms, they look like grip marks, and they're in various stages of healing. Sarah stepped forward. Doctor, my mother-in-law has been having some balance issues lately. She's had several falls recently. But Dr. Rodriguez was still looking at me. Is that true, Mrs. Chun? I stared at him, this stranger who was showing me more kindness than I'd experienced in months. And suddenly I was exhausted. Exhausted from lying, from covering up, from protecting someone who was slowly killing me. No, I whispered. That's not true. The room went very, very quiet. Can I speak with Mrs. Chen alone, please? Dr. Rodriguez asked Dot, and for the first time in 2 years, I was about to tell someone the truth. The room feels impossibly quiet after. Sarah leaves. Dr. Rodriguez pulls a chair close to my hospital bed, his movements deliberate and gentle. He's maybe 60, with greying hair, and the kind of weathered hands that speak of decades of healing people. There's something about his presence that makes me feel safe for the first time in months. Mrs. Chun, he says softly, I need to ask you some questions, And I want you to know that anything you tell me is confidential. Your daughter-in-law can't hear us. I nod, my throat suddenly dry. My head is pounding, and there's a bandage covering the stitches they put in my scalp. But my mind feels clearer than it has in a long time. The bruises on your arms, he continues. They're not from falls. I've been an emergency physician for 30 years. And I know what grip marks look like. I know what defensive wounds look like. Can you tell me how you really got them? The words stick in my throat. After months of silence, of lies, of protecting Sarah's secret, I don't know how to form the truth. I open my mouth, but nothing comes out. Dr. Rodriguez waits patiently. Take your time, he says. I'm not going anywhere. She hits me, I whisper finally, the words so quiet I'm not sure he heard them. Who hits you, Mrs. Chan? Sarah, my daughter-in-law. Once the words start, they come in a rush. She hits me with a wooden spoon, the same one she uses to make cookies. Everyone loves her cookies, but they don't know. They don't know what she does with that spoon when no one's looking. Dr. Rodriguez nods, his expression serious but not shocked. How long has this been going on? Almost 2 years. Since I moved in with them after my husband died. I'm crying now, tears streaming down my face. It started small. Little things, but it got worse. It keeps getting worse. The head injury today, how did that happen? I tell him everything. About the cookie dough. About Sarah's rage over the imperfect balls. About the wooden spoon coming down again and again until I fell and hit my head. About waking up in a pool of my own blood while Sarah tried to convince me it was just a little bump. She said I fell, I continue, my voice getting stronger. She always says I fell, or I bumped into something, or I'm just clumsy because I'm old. But it's not true. She hurts me on purpose. Dr. Rodriguez is writing notes, his pen moving steadily across the paper. Has she threatened you? Told you not to tell anyone? She doesn't have to threaten me directly. She makes it clear what will happen if I talk. She says no one will believe me. She says David will have to choose between his wife and his mother, and we both know who he'll choose. She says I'll never see my grandchildren again. Your grandchildren, Emma and Michael? Yes, they're 8 and 5. They're the only reason I stay. If I leave, if I cause trouble, Sarah will make sure I never see them again. And they need me. They need someone to absorb her anger so it doesn't fall on them. Dr. Rodriguez sets down his pen and looks at me directly. Mrs. Chun, what you're describing is elder abuse. It's a crime. And from what you've told me, your grandchildren may be at risk too. The words hit me like a physical blow. She wouldn't hurt them. She's their mother. Mothers can hurt their children, he says gently. And children who grow up witnessing domestic violence often become victims themselves later in life. By staying silent, you're not protecting them. You're teaching them that this is normal. I close my eyes, remembering Emma's serious face when she asked why I was crying. Michael's observation that Mommy gets angry when Daddy's not home. They're already learning the wrong lessons. What happens now? I ask double quotes now. We get you help. There's a social worker here at the hospital who specializes in elder abuse cases. Her name is Janet Williams, and she's going to want to talk to you. She can explain your options, help you understand what resources are available. Sarah will be so angry, I whisper. She'll say I'm lying, that I'm confused, that I have dementia. That's why we document everything, Dr. Rodriguez says. Your injuries, your statements, medical records. We build a case that shows a pattern. And Mrs. Chun, he leans forward slightly. You don't seem confused to me. You seem like a woman who's been systematically abused and is finally ready to ask for help. There's a soft knock on the door, and a woman in her 40s enters. She has kind eyes and a gentle smile, and she's carrying a folder. Mrs. Chen? I'm Janet Williams, the social worker Dr. Rodriguez mentioned. I'm here to help you understand your options and support you through this process. I look between them, these two strangers who are offering me something I'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. What about David? I ask. My son doesn't know. He thinks Sarah is perfect. This is going to destroy him. Your son loves you, Janet says, settling into a chair beside my bed. Yes, this will be difficult for him. But he deserves to know the truth about what's been happening to his mother. And you deserve to be safe. Safe, such a simple word, but it feels foreign to me now. I can't remember the last time I felt truly safe. I'm scared, I admit. That's completely normal, Janet says. But you're not alone anymore. We're going to help you through this, step by step. For the first time in 2 years, I believe that maybe, just maybe, there's a way out of this nightmare. Maybe it's not too late to save myself. Maybe it's not too late to save my grandchildren too. The next 72 hours pass in a blur of interviews, photographs and phone calls. I'm staying in a victim's shelter, a clean, quiet place where Sarah can't reach me, while Adult Protective Services begins their investigation. Janet Williams has become my lifeline, explaining each step of the process and helping me navigate. A system I never imagined I'd need. We need to document everything, she tells me on my second day here. Every incident you can remember, every injury, every threat. I know it's difficult, but the more detailed we can be, the stronger the case becomes. I spent hours with Detective Sarah Martinez. The irony of her name isn't lost on me, going through my story chronologically. She's patient and thorough, asking questions I hadn't thought to consider. Tell me about the wooden spoon, she says, her pen poised over her notepad. You mention it specifically. Why that particular object? I close my eyes, remembering. It was always within reach in the kitchen. She could grab it quickly and put it back before anyone noticed. And it was. It was symbolic somehow. She'd use it to make those perfect cookies that everyone loved. And then she'd use it to hurt me when they weren't looking. Did she ever explicitly threaten you with it? Not in words. But she'd touch it when she was angry, run her fingers along the handle. I learned to recognize the warning signs. I pause, remembering something else. She'd make me watch her cook sometimes. She'd be making cookies for a bake sale or church event, and she'd look at me while she stirred, and I'd know what was coming later. Detective Martinez makes notes. We'll need to seize that spoon as evidence. Has it been cleaned since the last incident? Probably. Sarah's obsessive about cleanliness. But ... I hesitate, then continue. She has a whole set of them. Different sizes. She'd use whichever one was closest. The detective nods. We'll take them all. On the third day, Janet brings me news that makes my stomach clench with anxiety. Your son wants to see you, she says gently. David called the hospital and Adult Protective Services. He's very upset, Margaret. He says he doesn't understand. What's happening? I've been dreading this moment. David, my baby boy, who I raised to be kind and trusting. How do I explain to him that his wife, the woman he loves, the mother of his children, has been systematically abusing his mother? Does he believe it? I ask. He's struggling, Janet admits. Sarah has been very convincing. She's told him that you've been having episodes, that you've become aggressive with her, that she's been trying to protect the children from seeing you in distress. My heart sinks. Of course, that's what she'd say. Sarah always was 2 steps ahead. She's claiming that you attacked her the day you were injured, Janet continues. That she was defending herself when you fell. The betrayal cuts deep, even though I expected it. And David believes her? He's confused. He loves you both. And he's being told two completely different stories. But Margaret, the evidence is on your side. Your injuries, the medical records, the pattern of abuse, it all supports your account. The next morning, Detective Martinez comes to the shelter with news that makes my heart race. "We've been to your son's house," she says. "We executed a search warrant and seized evidence, including the wooden spoons you mentioned. We also installed a temporary monitoring system, with the court's permission, to observe the family dynamics." "What did you find?" "The spoons tested positive for your DNA and showed microscopic traces of impact damage consistent with being used as weapons. We also found other evidence photos on Sarah's phone that inadvertently showed your injuries, internet searches about elder abuse and how to cover bruises. I feel a mixture of vindication and nausea. She documented her own crimes. Abusers often do, without realizing it. She took photos of family gatherings where your bruises were visible, thinking no one would notice. She searched for information about how long bruises take to heal, probably to time her attacks." "And Margaret?" Detective Martinez leans forward. "The monitoring system has already captured concerning behavior." "What kind of behavior?" "Verbal abuse directed at the children. Threats. Physical aggression that stops just short of hitting. And she's been coaching them about what to say if anyone asks about you." My worst fears are confirmed. Emma and Michael are in danger. Are they safe? For now. Your son is home and he's been made aware of our concerns. But based on what we've observed, Child Protective Services will likely need to get involved. That afternoon, I get an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, sits across from me in the shelter's visiting room, her hands twisted in her lap. "I should have said something sooner," she says, her voice heavy with guilt. "I saw things, Margaret. I saw Sarah grab you in the backyard once. I saw her push you when she thought no one was looking. But she was always so sweet to me, always bringing me cookies and asking about my garden." "You couldn't have known," I tell her, though part of me wonders what might have been different if someone had spoken up earlier. "I called the police yesterday," Mrs. Patterson continues. "I told them what I saw. And I talked to other neighbors. Mrs. Kim saw Sarah hit you with something through the kitchen window. Mr. Davis said he always wondered why you stopped coming to the mailbox, why you never talked anymore." The circle of silence is finally breaking. People are coming forward, sharing observations they'd dismissed or ignored. The perfect facade Sarah had built is crumbling, one witness at a time. "There's something else," Mrs. Patterson says. "Sarah came to my house yesterday, before the police arrived. She was different, Margaret. Desperate. She asked me to tell them that you'd been acting strangely, that you'd been violent with her. She offered to pay me. I stare at her. She tried to bribe you. She did. And that's when I knew for certain that everything you told them was true. The walls are closing in on Sarah, and she knows it. The question is, what will she do when she realizes her perfect life is about to collapse?" David finally visits me on Thursday evening, 5 days after I told the truth. He looks like he's aged a decade since I last saw him. His face is gaunt, his eyes red-rimmed, and his usually neat appearance is disheveled. When he sits across from me in the shelter's visiting room, I can see the boy I raised struggling with the man he's become. "Mom," he says, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to understand what's happening. I need to hear it from you." I take a shaky breath. This is the conversation I've been dreading and longing for in equal measure. "What has Sarah told you?" "She says you've been having episodes, that you've become aggressive and confused. She says you hit her first, that she was defending herself when you fell." His voice cracks. "She's been crying for days, Mom. She says she's been trying to protect Emma and Michael from seeing you like this. The lies are so perfectly crafted. So believable. I can see why David wants to believe them. It would be easier than accepting the truth. David, look at me. Really look at me. I push up my sleeves, showing him the fading bruises on my arms. These aren't from falls. They're grip marks from where she grabbed me. And this, I touch the bandage on my head, happened when she hit me with a wooden spoon and I fell backward. His face goes pale. Mum, you're 72. Sarah's half your size. If she wanted to hurt you, she could just push you. Why would she use a spoon? Because it was always there. Because it was small enough to hide, and it left marks that could be explained away. Because she could use it to make cookies for your friends and neighbors right after she used it to hurt me. David runs his hands through his hair. This is insane. Sarah makes cookies for everyone. She's the kindest, most caring person I know. The whole neighborhood loves her. That's exactly why she got away with it for so long. I lean forward, desperately trying to make him understand. She's brilliant at maintaining her image. But when it was just the two of us, she was different. She was cruel. But why? David's voice is anguished. Why would she hurt you? What possible reason? Because she could. Because I was vulnerable and dependent on her. Because she knew. I wouldn't fight back. I pause, gathering courage for what I need to say next. And because she's not who you think she is, David. She's not who any of us thought she was. David stares at me for a long moment, and I can see the war going on. Behind his eyes. He wants to believe me. I can see it. But accepting the truth means accepting that his wife, the mother of his children, is capable of systematic cruelty. The police took the wooden spoons, he says finally. They tested them. They found your DNA. Yes. And they showed me photos. From Sarah's phone. Pictures from birthday parties and family dinners where ... double quotes. He swallows hard. Where you have bruises that I never noticed. You weren't supposed to notice them. That was the point. How could I not see it? His voice breaks completely now. You're my mother. How could I not protect you? Because she's very good at hiding things. And because you trusted her. You had no reason not to. David buries his face in his hands. The kids keep asking where. You are. Emma wants to know if you're sick. Michael keeps asking if you're coming home. My heart clenches. How are they handling all this? They're scared and confused. There are social workers coming to the house, asking questions. Emma told them that sometimes you cry, and that Mommy gets angry when I'm not there. Michael ... David's voice trails off. What about Michael? He told them that Mommy has different voices. A nice voice for when Daddy's home, and a mean voice for when it's just you and her and the kids. David looks up at me, his eyes filled with pain. My 5-year-old son has been watching my wife abuse my mother, and I had no idea. They're good. Kids. They're observant. They knew something was wrong even if they couldn't understand what. Sarah's been arrested, David says quietly. They came this morning. She was making breakfast for the kids, and they handcuffed her right there in the kitchen. Emma started crying and Michael hid behind the refrigerator. I feel a complex mix of emotions, relief, vindication, but also sadness for what this means. For everyone involved. She kept insisting it was all a misunderstanding, David continues. Even as they led her away, she was saying that you were confused, that you'd made everything up. She looked at me like I was supposed to fix it, like I was supposed to make them believe her instead of you. Did you? David meets my eyes. No. Because I finally saw it, Mum. When the police were questioning her, when she was trying to explain. Away all the evidence, I saw that cold look in her eyes. Just for a second, when she thought no one was watching. And I realized I'd seen it before. I'd seen glimpses of it, and convinced myself I was imagining things. We sit in silence for a moment, both of us processing the magnitude of what's happened. What happens now? I ask. Now Emma and Michael are in temporary custody with my sister, Kate. Social services wants to make sure they're safe while everything gets sorted out, and I double quotes. He takes a shuddering breath. I have to figure out how to explain to my children that their mother is in jail for hurting their grandmother. They'll need therapy, I say gently. They've seen too much. We all will. David reaches across the table and takes my hand. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner. You believe me now, I say, squeezing his hand. That's what matters. But even as I say it, I know that believing is just the first step. The real work, healing, rebuilding, learning to trust again, that's going to take much longer. The courtroom is colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere, clinical, quiet, with that suffocating weight of formality pressing against my chest. I sit at the plaintiff's table, flanked by Janet and the assistant district attorney, hands folded tightly in my lap. My palms are damp despite the chill. My heart pounds not from fear of Sarah, though that still lingers somewhere deep, but from the knowledge that everything I've endured is about to be spoken aloud. Dissected, doubted, and judged by strangers in a room where truth has to be proved. Not simply lived. Sarah sits just a few feet away, on the other side of the aisle. Her blonde hair tied back in a modest bun, dressed in a pale blue blouse that softens her appearance. She looks every bit the concerned wife, the wrongfully accused daughter-in-law. She won't meet my eyes, but I feel the flicker of her presence like a thorn under the skin. Occasionally, her attorney leans over to whisper something, and she nods solemnly, as if this were all just a terrible misunderstanding. I glance briefly toward the gallery. David is there, sitting beside his sister Kate, his face tight with grief and conflict. His eyes meet mine for a heartbeat, and I see it again, that mixture of guilt, love, and unbearable clarity. He's here. That matters. The judge is an older, black woman with a commanding voice and steady gaze. She reminds me of one of the librarians I used to work with years ago. Firm but fair. Someone you couldn't fool with pretty words. I take comfort in that. I need someone who can see through masks. The prosecution opens with a timeline of events. Photographs of my injuries are displayed on a monitor. My bruised arms, the healing cuts on my scalp, the discolored marks across my ribs. The wooden spoons are entered into evidence, lined up in Ziploc bags with evidence tags. One of them, the one Sarah used most frequently, has traces of my DNA embedded in the worn handle. There's even a forensic report on the shape of the bruises and how they match the curve of the spoon's edge. It feels surreal, like watching my life turned into data. Then it's my turn. I rise slowly, my legs shaky beneath me, and walk to the witness stand. I've practiced this moment in my head a dozen times, what I'll say, how I'll keep my voice steady, but none of that preparation accounts for the weight of Sarah's presence behind me, or the way my stomach knots as the bailiff swears me in. Please state your name for the record. Margaret Chun. I speak clearly, but my throat is dry. I sip from the small paper cup of water Janet left for me, and begin answering the questions posed by the prosecutor. They start gently. When did I move in? What was my relationship with Sarah like in the beginning? When did things begin to change? I tell the story as best I can. I describe the first time she hit me, the spoon across my knuckles, the fake apology. I walk them through the slow progression, the hidden bruises, the isolation, the gaslighting, the fear. I describe the smell of cookie dough, and the sound of her voice flipping from honey to venom like a switch. I speak of Emma and Michael, of the confusion in their eyes, the way they learned to tiptoe around their mother's moods without ever having the words to describe why. "Why didn't you come forward sooner, Mrs. Chun?" the prosecutor asks. Kindly but firmly, I pause, swallowing the lump in my throat. Because I thought no one would believe me. Because she told me no one would. And because I was afraid that if I spoke up, I'd never see my grandchildren again. There's a silence. In the courtroom after that. Not the kind born of disinterest, but the kind that follows truth spoken plainly. The defense is ruthless but calculated. Sarah's attorney stands, buttoned in a sleek charcoal suit, and begins his cross-examination with practiced sympathy. "Mrs. Chun, you've described a pattern of abuse, but wouldn't you agree that your memory might be ... imperfect? You are, after all, 72. I am, I reply evenly, but my memory is just fine when it comes to pain. He presses harder. He brings up prescriptions for anxiety, mentions the times I supposedly misplaced things, the notes from Dr. Henderson about forgetfulness. He tries to paint me as confused, mentally fragile, perhaps even unstable, but I don't waver. Not this time. Is it possible, he suggests, that some of these injuries were self-inflicted? That perhaps in moments of distress or confusion? No, I say firmly, my voice rising slightly. Those bruises came from her hands. That head wound came from her spoon. You can spin it however you like, but I remember everything. I lived it. Sarah doesn't react, not visibly, but I notice the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she shifts in her seat when the spoon is brought out again during the testimony of the forensic technician. It's placed on a felt-covered table between us all, an ordinary object, unremarkable to most. But to me, it's the instrument of my silence. And now the proof of my truth. Janet testifies. Dr. Rodriguez testifies. So does Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Kim, and even a child therapist who's interviewed Emma and Michael since Sarah's arrest. Their statements form a web of corroboration too dense to ignore. The facade that Sarah built begins to collapse in public, not with drama, but with quiet precision. In closing, the prosecutor holds up the wooden spoon and turns toward the jury. This object, so commonplace, was used to terrorize a woman in her own home while the abuser smiled for cameras and baked cookies for charity events. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't confusion. This was abuse, calculated, sustained, and cruel. The jury deliberates for only 3 hours. When they return and the verdict is read guilty on all counts, I feel no elation, no triumphant surge. Just release. The unbearable tension that's lived under my skin for years begins, finally, to loosen. Sarah doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She just stares straight ahead. Her lips pressed tight. Her expression blank. For once, she has no role to play. No script to charm her way through. The judge sets sentencing for the following week, but I already know what matters most. I have been believed, and the truth is no longer mine to carry alone. The morning after the verdict, I wake up in the shelter with sunlight warming my face through thin white curtains. For a long time I simply lie there, unsure what to feel. There is no cheering, no victory music, no sudden rush of peace. Just quiet. The kind of quiet I used to long for in Sarah's house, when every footstep behind me made my shoulders tense. Now that it's here, this silence feels foreign, like my body hasn't caught up with the fact that I'm safe. Janet knocks gently on the door around 9. She brings me tea and a copy of the official court decision, though we both know I already heard it yesterday. Guilty on all counts. The words still echo in my head. There's a paper trail now, something permanent. Something that says, "This happened. You weren't imagining it." We sit together at the small table in my temporary room while I sip my tea and stare at the folded document. My hands tremble slightly, not with fear, but with the aftershocks of surviving. Janet doesn't push me to talk. She never does. But after a few minutes, I say softly, "It feels strange, knowing she's not coming back, that I'll never have to see her again in that kitchen with that spoon in her hand." Janet nods. Strange is normal after trauma. Relief can be disorienting too. The sentencing comes a week later. Sarah is given 5 years in state prison, with 3 years of probation after her release. The courtroom is quiet when the judge reads the sentence. David isn't there, but Kate is. She squeezes my hand as Sarah is led away in cuffs. Her face, pale and unreadable. For once, Sarah doesn't put on a performance. Maybe she knows the show is over. Or maybe she finally understands that no amount of smiling will erase the bruises she left behind. Begin therapy a few days later. The shelter arranges weekly sessions with a trauma counselor named Linda, who reminds me a little of my old friend Eleanor from book club. Calm, gentle, but with eyes that miss nothing. At first, I don't know where to begin. How do you explain 2 years of systematic cruelty when the rest of the world was clapping for cookies? But Linda doesn't rush me. She helps me unravel the knots one by one. We talk about grief, not just Harold's death, but the death of trust, of safety, of the version of myself that I'd carefully built over a lifetime. I begin to see that the abuse didn't start with the first hit. It started with my silence, with the way I was taught to keep peace, to be polite, to never be a burden. Meanwhile, David and I begin to rebuild our relationship slowly, cautiously, like people stepping through a burned house. He calls me twice a week now. Sometimes we talk about the children, sometimes about therapy, sometimes about nothing in particular. But we talk, and that matters. "I should have seen it," he says during one call, his voice heavy. "The bruises, the way you were shrinking into yourself. You were working. You were raising kids. And she was very good at hiding." I interrupt gently. "Blame doesn't build anything, David. We can't go back. But we can go forward." He's doing his own work, attending therapy, trying to understand how he let so much slip past him. He's moved in with Kate for now, so the children can have some stability while the custody case works its way through court. I haven't seen Emma and Michael yet, but I get regular updates through Kate, photos of Emma painting, little voice, recordings of Michael singing. They don't ask many questions about their mother yet, but I know the day is coming. I've started physical therapy for my shoulder and hip. The injuries I sustained in that final fall did more damage than I realized. But I walk a little stronger every week. The bruises have faded, though sometimes I still catch myself rubbing at the old spots, remembering the sharp bite of that spoon. My body remembers, even when my mind tries to move on. To my surprise, the community rallies around me. After the trial, several women from church write letters, some apologizing for not noticing, some admitting they suspected something, but didn't know how to help. Mrs. Kim even stops by the shelter, with a bouquet of wildflowers and a small envelope. Inside is a handwritten note. "You were stronger than her cookies. You were stronger than all of it, Dot." I tape it to the wall above my bed. Dr. Rodriguez visits once too. He drops off a book about healing after trauma and sits with me for 15 minutes. In the shelter's common room. "You saved yourself, Margaret," he says quietly before leaving. "And you may have saved those children too. Don't ever forget that." I don't. But I also don't pretend that healing is linear. There are nights when I still flinch at the creak of floorboards, when I dream of wooden spoons splintering in my hands. There are mornings when the shame creeps back in uninvited. How did I let it happen? Why didn't I speak sooner? Linda reminds me every time. Healing is not a question of speed. It's a question of truth. And I've finally chosen truth. Eventually, I find an apartment small, clean, and close to the senior center. I keep the curtains open during the day and fill the kitchen with sunflowers. I throw away every wooden spoon I own. I buy a silicone spatula in pale yellow and hang it on the wall. It's not just a cooking tool, it's a declaration. I'm no longer hiding. One afternoon, Kate brings the children to visit. Michael runs into my arms without hesitation, but Emma hangs back, her eyes watchful. Are you really okay now, Grandma? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. I kneel and take her hands. I'm getting there, sweetheart, and I'm going to be okay for a very long time. She wraps her arms around my neck and doesn't let go. In that moment, I realize something. Simple and profound. Sarah took many things from me. My safety, my confidence, my peace. But she did not take my future. And now, for the first time in years, I have one. The first time I speak at a support group for elder abuse survivors, my hands tremble so badly. I have to keep them folded in my lap. We're in a circle at the community center, just 7 of us, and the room smells faintly of instant coffee and winter coats. The walls are painted an unmemorable beige, but someone has pinned cheerful construction paper flowers to the bulletin board near the back. Linda, my therapist, encouraged me to come. You have something to say, she told me, and others need to hear it. At first, I just listen. One woman, a retired teacher named Gloria, talks about her grandson stealing her medication. Another gentleman, Harold his name, makes me wince, shares how his niece isolated him from the rest of the family, while slowly draining his bank account. Their stories are different, but the ache beneath them is the same. Grief wrapped in silence, loneliness disguised as duty, shame that never belonged to us, but was handed to us anyway. When it's my turn, I feel the weight of the room shift. They all recognize me, I think. The woman from the trial, the one whose story was splashed across the local paper beneath the headline, "Respected homemaker convicted in elder abuse case." My mouth is dry, but I speak anyway. I tell them about the spoon, the cookies, the ache in my bones that wasn't just physical, but emotional, how Sarah stripped me of dignity in front of no one, yet in full view of the people who should have seen. I speak slowly, carefully, letting each word land. No theatrics, just truth. When I finish, there's a moment of silence. Then Gloria reaches for my hand and squeezes it. You were brave, she says, her voice catching. You still are. That's the moment something begins to shift inside me. Not a sudden transformation, but a steady unfurling. I realize that I have more to offer than just survival. I have experience. I have a voice. I have a story that can open other people's eyes before the bruises ever appear. And maybe, just maybe, I have the strength to help someone else break free. Over the next few months, I begin volunteering with an elder advocacy group in the city. At first, I help with logistics, folding pamphlets, handing out flyers at clinics, assisting with intake paperwork. But it doesn't take long before someone asks me to speak again. This time, it's at a small workshop for caregivers and social workers. Just share your story, the program director tells me. They need to hear from someone who's lived it. So I do. And then I'm invited to speak again and again. Churches, community health fairs, even a podcast hosted by a local therapist who wants to raise awareness. Each time I tell my story, it gets a little easier. Not because the pain fades some days, it still throbs in my ribs or flashes behind my eyes when I see a wooden spoon in someone's kitchen, but because speaking helps me shape the pain into something useful. Something bigger than Sarah. Bigger than what she took from me. I then moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment not far from the senior center. It's small but sunlit, with a little porch where I grow basil and tomatoes in pots. I've reconnected with a few friends I lost touch with during the years I lived in David's house. Eleanor comes by on Tuesdays to play Scrabble and gossip about the people at Bridge Club. On Saturdays, I walk to the bakery and treat myself to a raspberry Danish. Just because I can. Freedom tastes like warm pastry and fresh air and a silence I no longer fear. One afternoon in late spring, I open a drawer to put away groceries and find an old wooden spoon I must have packed by accident. For a moment, I freeze. My breath catches. I grip the countertop to steady myself. Then, slowly, I pick it up, turn it in my hands, and walk it out to the trash bin. I don't flinch as I let the lid fall shut. I don't cry. It's just a spoon. It's not her anymore. It never was. When the time feels right, I invite Emma and Michael over for the weekend. It's been months since we shared a full day together. And while I've seen them briefly here and their holidays with Kate, supervised visits during the custody case, this will be different. This will be ours. We bake cookies together in my small kitchen. I let them choose the recipe: peanut butter with chocolate chips and sea salt. I use a silicone spatula instead of a spoon, and I show them how to measure flour properly, how to crack eggs with one hand, how to tell when the edges of the cookies are just golden enough. Emma rolls the dough with precision, her little brow furrowed in concentration. Michael gets more flour on the counter than in the bowl, but his laugh is worth the mess. When the first batch comes out of the oven, we sit at the table with cold milk and warm cookies and crumbs on our fingers. Michael eats 4 in a row and declares me the best baker in the whole city. Emma leans against my shoulder, sighing with that deep, 8-year-old satisfaction that only sugar and safety can give. They ask questions about their mother, of course. Simple ones at first. Where is Mommy? When will she come home? But over time, the questions grow more complicated. Emma remembers things now. Things she didn't understand before. She talks about the time Sarah screamed at her for spilling milk, about the way the house felt heavy when I cried. I don't fill in every blank, but I don't lie either. I tell them that love should never feel like fear. That family doesn't hurt each other to stay in control. That sometimes being brave means telling the truth, even when it's hard. Later, when they've gone back to Kate's for the evening, I sit on the porch and sip my tea. The sun is low, painting the walls golden. For the first time in a long time, I feel not just safe but proud. Proud of who I am. Proud of what I've survived. Proud of what I've rebuilt with my own 2 hands. Sarah tried to erase me, my worth, my voice, my role as a mother and grandmother. But here I am, not just standing but speaking. Not just surviving, but living. And I have no intention of going quiet again. There's a moment each morning now, just before the kettle whistles, when I pause in my kitchen and let the quiet settle around me like a shawl. It's not the fearful silence I used to endure, thick with dread and footsteps and the ever-present hum of Sarah's disapproval. This silence is earned, peaceful, a kind of stillness that belongs to me, and me alone. Sometimes I breathe in that moment and feel something close to gratitude. Not for what happened, no, but for what I've reclaimed since my new apartment is modest, but I've filled it with colour. There are hand-woven rugs in warm earth tones, paintings from local artists on the walls, and the smell of lavender from the sachets tucked into my dresser drawers. I keep a small garden on the balcony: herbs, tomatoes, and one stubborn orchid that refuses to bloom, but clings to life anyway. I understand it. Twice a week, I volunteer at the senior center, running a support circle for survivors of domestic and family abuse. At first, I worried that no one would come, but the room fills every Thursday. Some women are dealing with difficult adult children. Others carry decades-old scars left by husbands long buried. And a few, like me, were hurt by people the world thought were saints. We sit in a circle of folding chairs, paper cups of tea, cradled in our hands, and we tell the truth. Sometimes in fragments, sometimes with trembling voices. But the truth comes, and with it, relief. One woman named Teresa came for 3 weeks without saying a word. She just listened, hands folded. In her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. On the 4th week she spoke. Just 4 words. He broke my ribs. The room went still, and then someone reached for her hand. Not to fix her, not to explain it away, but to say we heard you. We believe you. I've never been prouder to be part of something. I also speak occasionally at public events, libraries, high schools, even churches that want to raise awareness about elder abuse. I used to feel shaky each time I stepped behind a podium. But now, when I see the eyes watching me, I remember why I'm there. I don't want sympathy. I want recognition. I want one woman in the back of the room to go home and question that sharp voice in her ear, the bruise she keeps explaining away, the isolation that's been passed off as concern. I want her to ask herself what I couldn't for so long. What if it's not you? What if it's them? My relationship with David is slowly healing. We speak weekly, and he visits with the children at least twice a month. Therapy has helped him untangle the guilt, the blindness, the crushing realization that he lived beside cruelty and didn't see it. He's no longer in Sarah's home. Of course, he sold the house after the conviction, and now rents a small bungalow closer to Kate, so the children can stay in the same school district. Sometimes I see him watching me when he thinks I'm not looking eyes, searching for signs of strength, or maybe for what he nearly lost. I let him come to his own conclusions. He needs space to rebuild himself just as I did. The children are doing better. Emma still asks hard questions sometimes about her mother, about the yelling, about why adults lie. I never lie to her. I keep it age appropriate, but I don't hide behind soft phrases. What your mother did was wrong, I told her one day when she asked why Sarah wasn't coming home yet. She hurt people she loved. And when that happens, there are consequences. But none of it was your fault. Not one bit. Michael is younger and his memory is more fragmented. He clings to routines, our Sunday cookie-making sessions, the lavender soap I keep in the bathroom, the bedtime stories I read when they stay overnight. He doesn't ask as many questions, but he watches everything. I see the tension leaving his little body each time we bake. Each time I let him stir the batter with the silicone spatula and not a wooden spoon. It matters. Even at 5, it matters. One evening, after the kids have gone home, I sit on my porch with a cup of mint tea and think about the people who helped me get here. Dr. Rodriguez, whose quiet persistence gave me the courage to speak. Janet Williams, who didn't let me fall through the cracks. Gloria and Teresa and the other women in the group who carry their own pain but still hold space for mine. And yes, even Kate, who stepped up when no one else knew how. Then there's the unexpected friendship that's blossomed between me and Janet. What began as a professional connection caseworker and client has turned into something gentler, more human. We meet for lunch now and then, sharing stories that have nothing to do with trauma. She tells me about her teenage son and his latest obsession with skateboarding. I tell her about the stubborn orchid on my balcony and the ridiculous new cookbook I'm working through, one disaster at a time. We laugh. We eat. We exist as 2 women rebuilding, one from what she's seen and one from what she's survived. There's a grant I'm helping right now. One that would fund a citywide campaign to educate caregivers and family members on the signs of elder abuse. It's still in the early stages, but I believe in it. I believe in doing more than just surviving. I want to leave something behind that protects others. Something that says, we are watching now. We are listening. And we will not be silent anymore. A year ago, I thought my story would end with silence. I thought I would fade, slowly and painfully, into invisibility, just another aging woman tucked into the margins of someone else's life. But I was wrong. My life is mine again. My voice is mine again. My kitchen, my memories, my boundaries, all mine. There are scars. There will always be scars. But there's also laughter. Fresh-baked cookies made with safe hands. Phone calls from grandchildren who know I love them. Friends who meet me in the light instead of the shadows. And a spoonless drawer that makes me smile every time I reach inside. This is not the life I planned. But it's the one I chose. And I'm not afraid of it anymore. It's a quiet Saturday morning. Exactly 1 year to the day since I stood in that courtroom and spoke the truth out loud for the first time. The air is crisp and clear, sunlight pooling on the kitchen counter. A faint breeze carries the scent of rosemary from the planter box outside, and somewhere down the hall, I hear Michael humming the same off-key tune he always hums when he's excited. Emma is already in the kitchen with me, tying her apron with practiced hands. We're doing your cookies today, right? She asks, her voice tinged with pride. My version, I say with a smile. No wooden spoons allowed. She giggles, then pulls a bright yellow silicone spatula from the drawer. The same one we always use now. The one I let her pick out at the store months ago. It's become something of a symbol in our little circle. No sharp handles. No hidden meanings. Just soft edges and clean lines and memories we're choosing to make new. The recipe isn't complicated. Butter, brown sugar, flour, vanilla, a dash of sea salt. Emma reads the steps aloud while I measure. Michael comes bouncing in, covered in marker from his latest coloring masterpiece, and I let him dump the chocolate chips into the bowl. We work, slowly, laughing when he sneezes flour across the counter. And I don't care that it makes a mess. That's the whole point now. Joy doesn't have to be neat. It just has to be real. While the cookies bake, we sit on the rug in the living room and sort through Emma's school folder stick figure drawings, spelling tests with gold stars, a crayon-colored family tree. I notice something that stops me cold. A little drawing of a kitchen. A grandmother, a little girl, a little boy, and a tray of cookies. Above it, she's written, I love baking with Grandma because she lets me stir and she always says yes. I trace the lines with my finger. This is the legacy I want. Not survival, not even strength, but warmth. Safety. A place where a child knows she can ask a question, spill a cup of sugar, burn a batch of cookies, and still be loved. Later that afternoon, David picks the children up. He lingers at the door as Michael fastens his shoes and Emma grabs her backpack. He looks tired, he always does these days, but there's a softness in his face now, a quietness that wasn't there a year ago, a kind of humility. Thank you for today, he says, watching the kids pile into the car. They talk about your cookies all week. Emma says you told her she can invent her own recipe next time. She can. We'll call it the Emma experiment, I say. He laughs, but then grows serious. I've been meaning to tell you. I read your essay. The one the advocacy group posted on their website. I freeze for a second, caught off guard. I didn't think you'd seen it. I wasn't ready before, he admits. But I am now. I nod, unsure what to say. The essay was raw, an account of what happened, why I stayed silent, how I found my voice again. I hadn't written it for David. I wrote it for women who hadn't yet spoken. I'm proud of you, he says quietly. And I'm so sorry. You don't have to say it every time, David. I know, but I need to. When they drive away, I walk back inside and pull the last tray of cookies from the oven. They're golden and soft, the chocolate chips still molten. I place a few on a plate and set them beside a cup of tea, then sit at the table with the window open, listening to the breeze and the hum of weekend life outside. This is where I am now. I've been asked to speak tonight at the annual Elder Abuse Awareness fundraiser. It's a formal event catered dinner, keynote speaker, all that. The kind of thing Sarah would have attended once, smiling for the cameras, maybe even donating a basket of her famous cookies. The irony isn't lost on me, but I'm not nervous. I know exactly what I'm going to say. That evening, dressed in a soft grey dress and the necklace Harold gave me on our 40th anniversary, I take the stage after the director introduces me as a survivor, an advocate, and a voice for those still silenced. The spotlight is warm, but the room feels kind. I see familiar faces: Janet, Dr. Rodriguez, several women from my support group. David sits near the back, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. I begin not with the abuse, but with the cookies. I used to think a wooden spoon was just a tool, something ordinary, but in the wrong hands, it became a weapon. And in a world that saw only sweetness, I was living in silence. I tell the story honestly. I don't sensationalize it. I don't soften it either. I speak about shame and isolation, and what it means to be invisible in your own home. I talk about what it cost to stay quiet, and what it gave me to speak. At the end, I hold up the yellow spatula. This is what I use now. It's flexible, safe, unbreakable, like me. The applause comes slowly, then steadily. Some people stand. A few wipe their eyes. Afterward, an elderly woman approaches me near the punch table. She's quiet, almost hesitant, until she whispers, "He hasn't hit me in a while, but he still yells. He tells me I'm nothing." "You're not," I say. "You're not nothing. You're here, and that's a start." She nods. Our eyes are shining. The next morning, I wake to find that the advocacy group has shared a clip from the fundraiser. It's already been reposted dozens of times. One comment reads, "Everyone loved her daughter-in-law's cookies, but now they love her voice more." And maybe that's the truth of it. The cookies were never the story. Not really. The story was how I unlearned fear. How I reclaimed my kitchen, my name, my role as a grandmother, as a mother, as a woman with a spine and a story. Today, I bake cookies with laughter instead of FLINCHES. And every time I reach for that yellow spatula, I remember, I am not what was done to me. I am what I chose to do next.